Welcome back to the series on how to find the right home equity line of credit in the second position. Today, we're going to be covering the state of Nebraska. My name is Denzel Rodriguez, your personal finance geek of the 21st century. Let's dive right into it. On the left-hand side of the board is our framework. These are the questions you want to ask. This is the data, the information that you want to obtain from the banks that you're researching in or out of your state to find the right home equity line of credit. At the time of recording this video, prime interest rate is at 7% as of November 2025. In this series on how to find the right home equity line of credit in the second position, I am covering every single state in the United States. This framework right here on the left-hand side of the board will not change during this whole entire series and will remain evergreen for years and years to come. That's very, very important for you to know that, okay, as long as I do these things, some of these questions require you getting your own personal finances and credit score at a certain place. Some of these questions are specific to the industry as a whole, what's going on, gives you that idea. And then some of the questions are like these are deal breakers, right? These are things that we want to avoid. These are things that we want to have inside of our HELOC. For example, when it comes to the interest rate calculation, if prime is at 7% and I see a bank offering a home equity line of credit where the interest rates are as low as 9%, immediately scratch that off your list. We don't want to obtain a HELOC that's prime plus 2 percentage points or higher as their lowest amount. You don't want to have that. You want to be with a bank that's offering a prime 7% home equity line of credit. And the best case scenario is when it's a prime minus 0.5, 0.25%. The highest that I've seen in terms of a minus from the margin is about 2%. So there's HELOCs out there where you can get an interest rate as low as 5%, 5.5% in that range. Typically, what we're seeing right now is around prime minus 0.25, prime minus 0.5, prime minus 0.75 to about 1%. All right. Then there are other just general rules. For example, when it comes to the LTV, loan to value. If you stay within 70 to 90% loan to value, or I really should say 70 to 89% loan to value, you're going to typically receive a better interest rate on the prime. Sometimes you'll be offered an intro rate as well, sometimes longer, sometimes lower rate than if you obtained a HELOC between 95 and 100% LTV. I personally, when I'm teaching my clients and my students, I prefer them to avoid borrowing all the equity in their home, having all that risk there. I like to, keep 10, 20 plus percent equity just in the property, because what if property values fluctuate? And if I have this HELOC, but my property decreases, I'll still be fine because it's nowhere near my credit amount, and my LTV would not even exceed 90 plus percent in that example. Okay. Things like credit score, that's a personal matter. I want to see your credit score at 720 or higher. Not that you have to do that. It just puts you in a better position. So if you follow and really check all these boxes, you're putting yourself in the highest approval chances and also the best product. With that being said, taking a look at Nebraska, I found 6 banks in my research, and I'm going to share my screen and show you my research that I've went through, just taking you through my process every single time so that there's no misunderstandings here. If you do this work, you take 20, 30 minutes. That's about how long this video might be, about 20, 30 minutes or so to discover the best banks that are available to us. So let me share my screen. Take a look at this. This is how I research. I simply just type in credit unions because those are the best banks that are going to give me typically the best offer on a home equity line of credit, second position, are going to be your credit unions, not-for-profit banks, federal credit unions, statewide credit unions. Those are the ones I'm looking at. So I type credit unions in Nebraska that offer a home equity line of credit. AI gives me a nice little list that I can choose from. I will skip past the sponsors. I scroll down all the way to the bottom of page 1, and then I will even go to page 2 to see what else I can find. Again, skipping the sponsors. Those are going to be the bigger banks. And usually I stop around page 1, page 2. So all these tabs I have here at the top to the right are all the banks that I found. So starting with Kellogg Bank, this is just me taking you through my research. Some made it on the whiteboard, some did not, and I'll explain why. So we got Kellogg Credit Union did not make it to the whiteboard. Well, why is that? Well, if I were to get a home equity line of credit with them, APR is as low as 7.49, 7.99, 8.49, then that depends on the draw. Now that's your home equity loans. If we look at a home equity line, I can only get between 25 to 50K on an 80% LTV. Draw period's only 5 years. Minimum rate 8.5%, so that's 1.5% above prime. Very, very unattractive right here. Prime rate plus a margin of 1 to 2.5%. So we got 1.5% being your lowest. Not attractive. And there's going to be some closing costs more than likely. So immediately, we're not looking at them. We're just going to go to the next. And let's see if I can pull up that credit union. It was Cobalt in my research. Right here. So Cobalt has a home equity line of credit. They have an intro rate, 6 months. Draw period, 10 years. Max credit line, 250K. All check marks so far. Let's find out what their rate is. They do a 4.49 for 6 months, and then the rate is as low as 7%. So that's prime, right on the dot. We like to see that. Could also be as low as 3.99 for 6 months under the loyalty APR. Loyalty APR, in my brain, most likely means that you are an existing client with this bank. So a member loyal discount of 0.5% requires maintaining direct deposit to a Cobalt checking account or savings account. Not a hard thing to do when you're doing this particular strategy. I always tell my clients, you want to bank where you have your HELOC at. It's going to make the strategy more efficient when you're able to move money in and out of the line of credit for that revolving function there. So Cobalt made it to the whiteboard. Okay. Then the next bank I found was Nebraska Federal Credit Union Energy. Home equity line of credit, honorable mention, about as low as 7%. And they go up to 90, 95%. Pretty low closing costs. Okay. Now, this is a type of bank most likely that is exclusive to certain people who have certain careers. Is what I'm willing to bet. Let me see if I can find it. See if I can join now. Yeah. So this bank is gonna be pretty solid if you're a student enrolled in Nebraska Lineman or Wind and Solar School, retirees of approved organizations, board members, employees of companies that provide product services to electrical power industry in Nebraska, extended family members, immediate family members, employees of municipality in Nebraska. So that's the only reason why I didn't put it on the board. And in my series, there may be some banks that do make it to the board, and maybe I just didn't know. But whenever I see that, I typically won't put it on the board, but I always encourage you that if you work for the government, you work for the military, you work for, in hospitality, you work in, you're a firefighter, police officer, typically those careers have specific credit unions just for you. So you're going to want to look at what kind of discounts you might be open to, but this would be a decent bank for the right person. Next bank I found was Centris Federal Credit Union. This made it to the whiteboard. They have a 12-month intro rate. We like that. Variable rate as low as 6.25%. Right? So that's on the intro rate, 6.25%. But then after goes to a prime plus. So that's almost 1 point above prime as of right now. So don't love that, but it's still worthy of the whiteboard because of that intro rate. Pretty decent closing costs, not bad at all. But again, if you worked for Nebraska in the energy field, I would be personally willing to forego an intro rate if I could have maybe no annual fees on my HELOC. The rate is prime. Yep, says no annual fees. Not bad. So it doesn't have a whole lot of details, but if I come back to rates, it does give us the fact that it could be as low as that, 7%. Closing costs is cheaper. But I put Centris on the board. Then we got Members Own Credit Union. Not a whole lot of information, but it's at prime. Now, again, at the time of recording this video, not every bank has updated their site. So the prime rate used to be 7.25%. So if you're seeing that in your research, just always look up prime, see where it's at, and then you call the bank and you can verify, hey, is the lowest rate now at 7% or is it still 7.25? If so, then that's obviously prime plus 0.25. I'm willing to bet Members Own is at a just prime rate. So most likely instead of 7.25, it'd be 7%. That made it to the board. We got Omaha Federal Credit Union. We've got home equity line of credit. See how it says starting at 7.25 prime rate. So technically that would be 7% as well. Got a draw period of 9 years, 80% LTV, 250K max. Notice how if you did 90, what do you get? Prime plus, starting at 8.25. So that's prime plus 1.25%. It's worth waiting or just getting a lower credit line to avoid that 1.25% cost. That's going to help you pay off debt faster. Again, when you get the right tool, you're going to be able to have acceleration. So I threw that one on the whiteboard. We got K-State. Didn't make it to the whiteboard just because I'm not able to get details. We have to text or call. 4 Points Federal Credit Union. Didn't make it to the whiteboard. Got a call. They were not giving much information. We got First Nebraska Credit Union. Home equity line of credit, 80% LTV, 6.24% intro rate first 12 months. Then it goes to prime. It's low as 7.25, so that would be 7%. 10-year draw. Pretty attractive. There is some closing costs, I believe. We can probably find that in here. Home equity line of credit. Prime rate. 85. Let's see, minimum advance. All right, closing costs typically between $225 and $1,000. So that's low closing costs, but could be maybe a little bit high, but it could be low. All right, so giving us a nice little range there. 250K is the max. Pretty effective. So another bank I found called Liberty First Credit Union. Not able to get the information, so can't put it on the board. But it's worth calling if you live in Nebraska. You can compare my research with your research. Keep in mind, I don't live in your state, so not as many banks are going to pop up for me when I'm doing this research. Last bank I found, honorable mention, you got New University of Nebraska Federal Credit Union. They offer a home equity line of credit. Lowest prime says 7.25, but most likely is 7. 80% LTV. Not bad. So we come back to the whiteboard here, give you my top picks. I personally pick First Nebraska Credit Union. I like the, intro rate is the lowest and longest. So you got the 4.49, which is lowest rate, but not the longest period. 6.24 is a nice balance. 12 months, we got 6.25 on Centris, but the rate goes to Prime Plus. So it definitely comes in a different, that could be my second or third pick. Between Cobalt and First Nebraska, actually, you know what? I'm gonna change my top picks. I'm gonna stick to what I typically lean more toward. I think Nebraska just wasn't as competitive as some other states that I've seen. But when it comes to what I value most is that prime or prime minus rate. If I can avoid a prime plus rate and I have to give up an intro rate, I might do that. In many cases, I might do that. The only reason why I would not is dependent on the debts that you're trying to remove. If you know you can get rid of quite a few debts within that 12-month range, and by the time it adjusts, it doesn't have the same effect, wouldn't be against it. But even then, I'd say, hey, First Nebraska is doing 6.24 12 months. So pretty much the same intro rate. Then it goes to prime afterwards. Same credit limit. I think Centris and First Nebraska both go up to 250K. Both are 10-year draws. The closing costs are similar. The LTV is similar. So First Nebraska takes precedent for me. That's first place. I would put Cobalt next because Omaha members and university all don't have any intro rates, but they're all at prime. Cobalt is at prime. So let me just put Cobalt as my number 2 pick. And then maybe I put Centris as my third, maybe. Just depends. So those are my top picks. These are not bad banks. They have their advantages. Omaha members, university are all pretty much competing with each other. The only nuances might be LTVs and credit limits might be slightly higher, slightly lower in the draw periods. But overall, we covered the state of Nebraska. My last recommendation for you is to bring in a professional, take a look at your finances in details. All right, so that could be myself or someone else in the space online. You can click the link below to book a consultation with me directly. You'd send me all your numbers. You'd send me the research you've done. You can compare it to research that I've done for you. We can brainstorm together, pick the right bank, the right time, the right setup, know exactly what your strategy is going to be before you even have the tool in your hands. So with that being said, have a wonderful day. God bless. We'll be talking soon.